Hey guys, welcome to a new experiment in the Cygnus Destroyer LJN Defender repertoire. As I'm sure you've already noticed, this video marks the beginning of Spider-Man month on the channel. As I was made aware by Adrian Fahrenheit of YouTube, August marks the 52nd anniversary of the first appearance of Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy 15. As soon as he reminded me of this, I knew it'd be a perfect time to tackle the Game Boy titles. I was originally going to do it in my traditional multi-game review style. However, I changed my mind and decided to try reviewing them separately on a weekly basis. Weekly. My decision was strengthened after seeing the reception that the Hunt for Red October mini review received. A number of you have said that you'd love to see me do more reviews like that, so this is my way of testing it out. This doesn't mean that the regular long form videos are ending, of course not. However, this would allow me to review more of the games that I own, so I'm really excited about the possibilities this would provide me. Let's give a big thanks to Adrian for giving me the seed of the idea for Spider-Man month and in the process leading me to try out weekly mini reviews. Now, it's time to load up your web shooters and swing across the skyline with the original Amazing Spider-Man. Released in July 1990, the Webhead's initial entry into the portable market was developed by Rare. Yes, that Rare. Rare developed a number of LJN's licensed tie-ins, including Who Framed Roger Rabbit, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Beetlejuice, but those are for another time. The Amazing Spider-Man is one of the first video games to feature Peter Parker's alter ego, even preceding the return of the Sinister Six for the NES. Speaking of which, for those who are wondering, Return of the Sinister Six, Maximum Carnage, and Spider-Man the Animated Series game will not be featured as part of Spider-Man month. I just wouldn't have time to properly cover them. Plus, I just want to kind of save them for a later occasion. Now, with that addressed, let's get on with the review. The story starts off with Mysterio contacting the Daily Bugle staff photographer via walkie-talkie? Unfortunately, the villain has more in his mind than some bro time in the Parker Tree Fort, residence. Domi has kidnapped Mary Jane, and between trading insults, tells Pete to meet him in the alleyway for more information. Not surprisingly, level 1 is set in said alleyway. On initial appearances, everything seems hunky-dory about this early Game Boy release. The graphics are impressive, the action is properly paced, and best of all, there's minimal to no slowdown. Digging past the surface layer reveals some flaws in the controls. Some critics have brought up that there's a delay between the button press and the actual attack, but I haven't really noticed this. If there's a delay, it's certainly no more than that of its early period portable peers for the original Nintendo handheld. The big issue for me in regards to the controls is with the jumping. There are two jumps, one of which being the equivalent in height of a double jump. Whereas this is normally accomplished by tapping the A button twice in quick succession, here it's done by pressing A during a walk. This sounds simple, but believe me, it's not. For the life of me, I couldn't get this down on a consistent basis. You'd think that as long as the D-pad is held left or right, a press of the A button would send him leaping high into the air, but more often than not, I'd repeatedly stop short at an obstacle in my path. Despite what the title says, this Spider-Man doesn't seem so amazing to me. Once the jumping mechanic is adapted to, progression for the stages is hindered by your typical everyday criminals. Some wield bats, others have guns, and my favorites are the ones that lumber defenselessly straight towards the wall crawler with their arms held stock still at their sides. Regardless of what they're packing or not, they all go down in quick succession. In level 1, the Lizard, one of the franchise's famous rogues gallery, pops up out of the sewer holes to try to take a bite out of the human arachnid. Very crafty, Connors, but Pete's got the drop on you. Literally. The default method of dispatching this menace is just a punch, but Parker's signature webbing can be shot out to eliminate the threat from a distance by pressing down or up on the D-pad and B. Be careful not to rely on this, as the webbing is limited and is much better served in the function of swinging away over the enemies below. This is performed by holding the A button at the end of a high jump. As mentioned before, this can free our hero from the horde below, but in the process makes him a sitting duck to the bats, birds, and other aerial pests that litter the sky. Things may look pretty dire for this superhero, but there are power-ups in the form of burgers and web fluid refills to replenish the finite health and ammunition meters. These items pop up quite frequently, most often in empty windows, so be on constant vigilance for these essential lifesavers. If the titular character fails in his duty to restore peace, fear not, as whether continuing or coming back after a lost life, he resurrects right back where he left off, Simon's Quest style. This applies to boss fights as well, even retaining how much life had been taken off the bar on the previous attempt. Whether soaring above like a bird on the wind or taking out toughs of extreme prejudice on the ground, the end of each level always results in a boss fight with the iconic supervillains. First up is Mysterio, who dematerializes and flits back and forth in a damaging vapor trail. Mysterio's not too difficult, but the webhead can lose a lot of health quickly if he gets too close. The second level brings on another walkie-talkie convo, this time with the Hobgoblin. What sets the second and fourth levels apart from the rest is that they begin with a vertical wall crawling segment. The objective is simple: get to the top of the building and jump into the open window marked in. These sections contain an assortment of falling debris, baddies with weapons, and deadly birds of prey waiting to dispose of the friendly neighborhood Good Samaritan. These areas can get awfully hectic and quick. I mean, just look at this! That's a chaotic mess if I've ever seen one. The rooftop fight that follows isn't as hard as it's made out to be, especially with a modicum of control over the high jump and web swing. The Hobgoblin battle that ensues at the finish is laughably easy. Just crouch in a spot and spam the kick button. It'll connect when he flies up, avoid his pumpkin bombs, and repeat from step 1. Easy peasy. Later boss fights involve the Scorpion, Rhino, and Doc Ock, among others, but the general formula remains largely unchanged. The Amazing Spider-Man may not live up to its title, but considering that it was released during the infancy of the platform, I think it does a decent job of capturing the excitement and drama of a day in the life of the masked crime fighter. Is it a great game? Hell no! But it's not horrible either. Visually, it's fantastic, but the controls leave a lot to be desired. The jumping is wonky, the attack timing takes some getting used to, and Parker can easily get caught in a barrage of bullets, birds, and rhino rampaging that will leave him dead in moments. It's clear to anyone that the Amazing Spider-Man has some serious flaws, but all in all, I like it for what it is. It probably helps that I really dig the soundtrack, composed by the truly amazing David Wise. Wise was like the Hiroyuki Masuno for Rare, in that pretty much all of the company's classic 8 and 16-bit catalog had soundtracks composed by him. One thing I especially dig about this particular soundtrack is that the title song incorporates the classic 60s animated theme. Check it out! That's really freaking cool if you ask me, and if everything else about The Amazing Spider-Man sucked, it would still earn my respect for this alone. If you're a fan of the Game Boy and Marvel superhero titles, I definitely recommend picking this one up, but I would only get it for $5 tops, preferably less. That marks the end of the first entry in Spider-Man month. Next up on the agenda, not surprisingly, is Spider-Man 2. Development responsibilities were switched over from Rare to Bits, the company responsible for a title that for some reason has always been one of my favorites, Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. Would this be a change for the better? Tune in next Friday to find out. Now, of course, it's time for always the traditional social media blitz. Woo! Lower third, enter the lower third right there. All the social media is right there. Now, on to more important matters rather than my social media is, of course, if you haven't watched it already, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I did a mini review on the Hunt for Red October. You can watch that if you haven't. I guess I'll put an annotation. But more importantly, that started out as a collaboration with BeneVolentDickNES, and he finally put out his review, his much better, in my opinion, much better review. So if you haven't watched that, you should definitely check that out. I'll put an annotation on the screen, put up the link in the description. Benny's awesome. Benny has inspired me to push myself even further as a video maker. a lot of the sprite work and all that. Like I said in the mini review, I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for him. So like I said there, if you like what I do, you should definitely check him out because he's awesome. He's a funny dude. He's an awesome dude. You won't regret checking him out. One last shout out that I want to mention that I've already thanked him on Twitter, of course, but I want to mention Jonathan Chapman for for modding my Game Boy, like you've seen in this video, and you will see in the other ones. You can't really see it the greatest in my lighting here, but you can kind of see it. It's just badass. I'm under my bright video lights. You can't really tell the greatest, but yeah, trust me, this thing is awesome. So, I mean, as you'll see in the rest of the video. So yeah, thanks again, John. I really appreciate it. Very great work. You know, I love this thing. I've always been kind of fascinated by the backlit Game Boys. I didn't think I'd ever own one for myself, but there we go. And I love playing on this thing. So yeah, once again, thanks a lot, John. So that's it for this installment. Like I said, Spider-Man 2 next Friday, and all the other ones will be on every other Friday, every Friday for the month of August. So there'll be 5 videos in total during Spider-Man month. So I can actually say, tune in to the next LJN Defender time or Spider-Man time, and on the same channel because you'll find it there. So I hope you guys like this, and you can leave a comment or whatever about if you think it's cool, the idea of me doing mini reviews. I don't know how consistently I'm going to do them. I will say that recently I just picked up a bunch of Power Rangers games. So Power Rangers 3 is definitely going to happen. But what I might do this time, because I think it's more games, I think I got like around 8 games, like a bunch of the Game Boy Advance games, and I got Lightspeed Rescue for the PS1 and Zeo Pinball. Yeah, I got a bunch of Power Rangers games. So I might actually do those in weekly installments as well. So yeah, if you think that's cool, let me know. If you think you'd rather see it as the long form video, that would be way long. It'd probably be the longest of them all. It'd probably be like 40 some odd minutes. So I think it would work best as weekly installments. So yeah, like I said, I do like the idea of weekly videos, and I think I'll do them every now and then. So that's it. I'm rambling. I will say goodbye to you guys. See you next Friday.